Callum handed me the divorce papers on a Tuesday morning in our own building lobby while I was still wearing the shirt I had put on to look good for someone else. He didn't say a word. He just watched the process server do his job, held the door open for himself, and left. And the worst part, the part I have never said out loud to anyone, is that I stood there and thought, I didn't think he had it in him. 7 years of marriage, and that was my first thought. My name is Sarah Calloway. I am 33 years old, and the most honest thing I can tell you about myself is this. I have never once walked into a room without immediately calculating whether I was the most interesting person in it. Not the smartest, not the kindest, the most interesting. The one people would remember when the room emptied out. I had been doing this since I was 9 years old, which is exactly when my mother stopped doing it for me. Stopped looking, stopped choosing, packed 2 suitcases on a Thursday while I was at school, and moved in with a man who made her feel like the most fascinating thing he had ever seen. She left a note on the kitchen counter. She did not leave her forwarding address. My father found both of these facts equally believable. I had been married to Callum for 6 years. He was 38, a civil engineer who built flood management infrastructure for a living, which meant he spent his days designing systems to hold back enormous destructive forces with quiet structural precision. I did not understand when I married him that this was also how he loved. He remembered things without being asked. He drove 40 minutes in traffic to pick me up from a work dinner that went badly and never once said I told you so about the job I had defended to him for a year. Every Sunday morning, we did the crossword together at the kitchen table with a rule he invented. Pen only, no erasing. You build on the wrong answers instead of removing them. He said it was more honest that way. He had a mug he bought at a street market in Lisbon on our 2nd anniversary trip. Ceramic, painted blue with a small white fish near the handle that was slightly smudged because the potter had been working fast. €3. It had a hairline crack along the base that held but never let you forget it was there. He used it every morning for 6 years without ever replacing it. That October Sunday, rain misting through the balcony door and the crossword open between us, I filled in 11 across with the wrong answer on purpose just to see what he would do. He studied it, tilted his head, and built the next 4 clues around my mistake, which meant everything downstream was also wrong in a very specific and somehow logical way. He made a sound that was almost a laugh. I felt something warm pass through me and then past me, the way heat leaves a room when someone opens a window. He refilled my coffee without being asked. He tended. He kept everything running. The coffee, the bills, the calendar, the car's oil change, the thing I had needed to do for 3 months that he simply did one afternoon without mentioning it. I told myself I was lucky. I said the words in my head. I did not feel them arrive anywhere. That evening, after Callum fell asleep with a book open on his chest and his reading glasses still on, I picked up my phone. There was a message I had not answered from earlier in the week. Nico Reyes, a photographer I had met once at a gallery opening 6 weeks ago, asking if I'd be at a mutual friend's birthday party next month. I read the message twice. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. I did not answer. I did not delete it. I lay in the dark next to my sleeping husband, and I was aware, in the precise way you are aware of a door you have left unlocked, that those 2 things were not the same. I told myself the coffee was just coffee. I know exactly how that sounds. I also know I changed my shirt before I left the apartment, arrived 20 minutes early, and spent those 20 minutes in the coffee shop bathroom looking at my face in the mirror with the specific attention of someone preparing for a performance. Nico Reyes photographed people for a living. Events, editorial work, portraits commissioned by people who wanted to be seen in a particular way. He had the particular skill of making you feel, while he looked at you, like you were the most compositionally interesting thing in his frame. Within the first hour of coffee, he told me I was the most compelling person he'd photographed in the past year. He said it the way you read out a measurement, as fact, not flattery. And this pitch landed with the exact precision of an arrow finding a wound that had been open for 24 years without anyone knowing where to aim. I drove home warm, the specific warmth of an audition that has gone well. I made dinner. I was kinder to Callum that evening than I had been in months, more present, more affectionate, laughing at something he said in the kitchen and touching his arm when I passed him. He noticed. I watched the careful tension he had been carrying in his shoulders since summer quietly release. He asked about my day and I said networking coffee with someone from the design world, which was technically true the way a photograph of one room is technically of the house. He said that was good. He seemed genuinely glad. That warmth I gave him on the fuel of someone else's attention. That is the thing I am least able to forgive myself for. Not the later things. That. 10 days on, Callum asked me about Nico by name. We were in the kitchen on a Thursday evening. He was at the counter making coffee, the Lisbon mug already out, and he did not look at me when he began. He said he'd noticed I was on my phone more in the evenings. He said he'd noticed a specific shift, that I had become quieter with him in a way that felt less like tiredness and more like somewhere else. He named the gallery opening. He named Nico. He said he'd seen a message in our extended group chat. He named the specific chat, named the day, named what someone had written. And he set the mug down and looked at me and asked, carefully, without heat, if there was something he should know. It was a fair question asked by a fair person, and I responded to it by making him the problem. I said he was doing this again. I said every time I had any investment in any part of my life that didn't center him, he found a way to make it a controlled interrogation. I said the word insecure and I aimed it and watched it land. He went quiet. This was the thing about Callum that I had learned to use like a lever. He did not escalate past the point where he could trust himself. He did not raise his voice or find the most cutting available thing and say it. He organized himself inward. He went still. Then he came back 20 minutes later with the quality of someone who has moved through something and come out the other side of it. And he said, standing in the doorway, not coming closer, that he wasn't interrogating her. He said he was telling her that something in his home felt wrong, and he would rather know a hard truth than guess at a comfortable lie. And he said that was all he was asking for. Then he went to bed. I stood in the living room. Then I opened my phone and replied to Nico's message. Not from the bedroom, not from my office. From the couch, 10 feet from the closed bedroom door, with the knowledge that Callum was 20 feet away, on the other side of a wall. I chose carelessness deliberately and named it to myself as freedom, which is the kind of lie you can only tell yourself if you've had enough practice. My friend Ren had lunch with me that week. I told her about Nico with language I selected carefully. A flirtation, an interesting energy, nothing that was going anywhere definitive. She laughed. She asked if I was going to act on it. I said I didn't know. She said I had always been too alive for the domestic life, which I accepted as permission, which was not what she would have wanted me to do with it, if she's honest with herself now. The following week, a message appeared in the extended friend group, a loose orbit of 20 people who see each other 4 times a year. Someone mentioned Nico's name. Someone else replied that he and Sarah had been inseparable at that coffee thing. What was that about? The message sat there for 4 minutes before the conversation moved on. What I did not know was that Callum's phone was also in that chat, that he was sitting in the chair by the window when the notification came in, that he read it, set the phone down on his knee, and looked at the wall for a long time, that when he eventually got up and came to the kitchen for water, he stood at the counter with the Lisbon mug in his hand for a moment, before putting it back and going to bed without saying anything. He had a longer memory than I gave him credit for. That was the thing I kept underestimating. The rooftop bar was on the 12th floor of a converted building in the Arts District, string lights end to end across the open ceiling, the city spread below like something that had no idea what was about to happen to it. 40 people for Rhea Donovan's birthday. Rhea, who had known Callum since before I existed in his life, Ria, who had been watching me for 2 years with the particular patience of someone assembling a full picture before saying anything. We arrived together. I found Nico before I found Ria. I registered this and filed it. Callum got drinks. He talked to Ria's partner about something I was not following. He was doing everything right. Present, warm, socially effortless, in the steady way he was effortless at everything. And I watched him from across the room and felt, with an irrationality I recognized even then, a small, clean flicker of irritation. As if his being fine, his being completely and quietly fine, was its own kind of abandonment. Nico had his camera. He always brought the camera, which served the double function of professional habit and social permission. It meant he could be everywhere, move toward anyone, stay as long as he wanted without it reading as anything other than work. He found me within 30 minutes. I stayed where I was, and he arrived, and I tell myself that because I need the architecture of it to work a certain way. We talked. I was funny, the performing well kind of funny, the kind where every sentence lands and you feel the room's warmth tilting toward you. He remembered things I had said weeks ago in passing and surfaced them like they were worth preserving. And in those moments I felt like a person whose words had specific gravity, whose presence in a room was not accidental but necessary. He lifted his camera and took my photo. Not secretly, openly, the professional habit made casual, and I turned toward him instinctively the way I always turned toward a lens, and the shutter clicked. And 30 seconds later his phone was in his hand, and the photo was posted to his public story, tagged at the venue, my face visible, my name in the location caption. I did not know this had happened. Not immediately. What happened immediately was that someone in the group, not Ria, someone peripheral, someone without context, saw the notification and said it out loud. Nico just posted Sarah. You two are everywhere lately. Said it casually, the way you say something that is simply true, conversational, nothing pointed. The group chat lit up. 4 replies in 90 seconds. Callum's phone was in his jacket pocket. He took it out. He read it. He did not change his expression. His face simply became the kind of still that is presence deciding not to move. He put the phone back in his pocket. He picked up his drink. He set it down on the nearest surface. He crossed the room. He came to where I was standing with Nico and he said, quietly enough that only the 3 of us and Ria, who was standing 4 feet away, could hear, that he would like to go now. That was all. 4 words, level, final. I looked at him. I looked at the room behind him. 40 people, the string lights, the open city below, the specific warmth of a party that had just tilted its attention in our direction. I felt the audience, and the audience is the thing that has always made me do the thing I later cannot explain. I said he could go if he needed to. I said it clearly enough for the group to hear. I said I'd find my own way home. The room went quiet, the way rooms go quiet when something real has just happened at volume. Ria looked at Callum, not at me, at him. She said his name, 1 syllable, the way you say someone's name when you want them to know you see them. Nico took 1 step backward. He did it without thinking, an instinct, not a decision, and I saw it and filed it away in the section of my brain where things go that I am not ready to understand yet. Callum looked at me for 3 seconds. It was not an angry look. It was not a hurt look. It was the specific expression of someone who has just received the last piece of a very long equation and now has everything they need. He said goodnight to Ria. He thanked her for the invitation, specifically and warmly, the way you thank someone when you mean it. He walked to the door. He did not look back. The door closed. I was standing in the middle of 40 people with Nico 6 inches away and a party that had resumed but was somehow different in temperature. And I performed my way through the next 40 minutes on sheer momentum and the story I was telling myself, which was, I refused to shrink. I am a woman who refuses to disappear. He walked out and I stayed. And that is what choosing yourself looks like. Ria did not talk to me again that night. On the elevator down, she stood beside me and looked at the doors and said, without turning her head, that she hoped I knew what I was doing. I said I did. She nodded once. The elevator opened. She went left, and I went right, and I did not understand until much later that she had been saying goodbye. On the walk to my own cab, my phone showed the notification. Nico's story posted 45 minutes ago, my face in the frame, the venue tagged, already 47 likes. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I liked it myself. I want to be accurate about this. I saw the post that was the specific piece of documentation that would be referenced in a legal filing 4 weeks later, and I double-tapped it with my thumb, and I went home. Callum was not there when I arrived. He had gone to his brother's. I found this out the next morning from a 2-word text. He came back Sunday evening. He did not bring it up. He made coffee in the Lisbon mug and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook I had never seen before, writing something in it with the methodical attention he brought to load-bearing calculations. When I asked what he was writing, he said, "Notes. Sunday morning, 9 days after the rooftop, I decided to be strategically honest. Not actually honest. I was careful about the geometry of it, but honest enough that the record would show I had come to him first. I told myself this was emotional maturity. I told myself this was the kind of difficult interior labor that people in evolving relationships owed each other. I said the words we have grown apart in the kitchen, with my coffee in both hands and my voice at the calibrated register of someone who is sharing a difficult truth. He let me finish. Then he asked, without looking away, "When did it start, in your view?" I said it had been gradual. He said he agreed, and that gradual things usually had a specific point where they crossed from passive to chosen, and he was asking which one described our situation. I said I didn't think it was useful to frame it that way. He picked up the Lisbon mug. He drank. He set it down. He said, "Sarah, I know you were at Nico's studio on the Tuesday you said you were working from home." He said, "His location posts that morning put him 2 blocks from here, and the timestamp conflicts with when you said you opened your laptop, and I'm not asking you to explain it, I'm telling you that I know. And I'm asking if there's anything true you want to say to me while there's still a moment for it to matter." He said it without anger, without volume, without the heat that would have given me something to push against. The kitchen did something. The air quality changed, the way it changes when a window breaks in a room that seemed sealed. I felt my prepared performance leave my body like a tide going out, and for 3 full seconds I had nothing. No pivot, no reframe, no next sentence. Just the specific blankness of someone whose script has been read back to them by the person they were performing it for. I recovered. I said I thought he was choosing to construct a narrative out of coincidences because it was easier than examining his own role in the distance between us. I said it was interesting that his response to feeling disconnected from his wife was surveillance rather than presence. I said the word surveillance and watched him not react to it. He said okay, and he left the kitchen. That evening, Callum opened his laptop at the kitchen table and went through the joint financial accounts, statements, the shared card history, 3 years of transactions, month by month. He did it methodically, with the notebook beside him, the pen moving at regular intervals. He did not hide the screen. I came in for water, saw what he was looking at and said, "Seriously?" He said he was reviewing their finances. He said it the way you state the weather. He did not look up. I went back to bed and assembled 3 explanations for his behaviour, all of which positioned me as the person being surveilled rather than the person who had given him a reason to look. His father Brennan lived 40 minutes away. We went for dinner on Saturday. Brennan Vance was a man of very few words and the specific quality of attention that comes from having spent 64 years paying attention to things without announcing it. At the table, he asked how we were doing. Not socially, actually. He looked at Callum when he asked it. Callum said they were going through a difficult time. His voice did something in the word difficult. A roughness arrived in one syllable and was gone, something unmanaged, something that could not have been rehearsed. Brennan looked at his son for a long moment and then looked at his plate. I told myself it was strategic. I told myself Callum was performing injury for his father's sympathy, establishing a narrative before any verdict was in, building his case with the same methodical engineering he brought to everything. I believed this completely, because I had spent so long managing my own emotional presentations that I had genuinely lost the ability to recognize one that wasn't managed. He was simply sad. He was a person whose marriage was ending and who had, for one syllable at his father's dinner table, been unable to contain it. I could not tell the difference between real grief and performed grief, and this, more than the rooftop, more than the studio, more than any of it, is the thing that tells me everything I need to know about who I was then. After dinner, while I helped clear the table, Brennan sat beside Callum in the living room. I heard the low frequency of a private conversation. The one thing that reached me clearly, through a gap in the conversation's murmur, was Brennan saying, "Son, you document everything you've built before you let someone tell you it was never yours." I came back into the room. Both of them looked up. The conversation between them had left something in the air. Settled, specific, finished. On the drive home, Callum was quiet in a way I had not encountered before. Not the managed quiet of a person containing something, but the settled quiet of a person who has received something he needed and put it in its place. 3 days later, his sister Petra called him. I heard him take the call in the hallway in the low, controlled register he used when he was being careful. And then Petra's voice came through the door at a volume she hadn't intended, clear enough for me to catch. She liked the photo herself. Callum. She double-tapped her own evidence. The conversation dropped back to murmur. I stood in the kitchen with my coffee going cold on the counter and the Lisbon mug on Callum's side, untouched. And I told myself Petra had always been looking for a reason. I did not touch the mug. I did not know why I didn't touch it. I know why now. The afternoon light in Nico's apartment was extraordinary. East-facing windows, high ceilings, the kind of light that makes everything look like it was composed. He had a bookshelf along the entire south wall, his camera equipment arranged on a long table, a chair by the window that caught the golden hour precisely. I sat in the chair. I took a photo. My face turned toward the light, the bookshelf visible behind me, his camera bag in the corner of the frame, the location tag set to his building's address. I thought about Petra when I posted it. I posted it anyway. The likes arrived in 90 seconds. Nico came back into the room from the kitchen, saw the notification on my open screen, and went still in a way I had not seen from him before. He asked, carefully with a kind of neutral precision, if I had thought about what that was going to do. I said I was done performing privacy for a marriage that was already over in every way that mattered. He looked at me for a moment. He said, "Okay." He went back to the kitchen. He did not come back for a while, and the not coming back had a different quality than before. I walked home in the specific energy of someone who has just planted a flag and is waiting for the terrain to respond. I had 3 versions of the conversation ready. Callum was in the living room with the Lisbon mug in his hands when I came in, not drinking, holding the coffee probably long finished. And he looked up when I came through the door. He said, "I want to have one honest conversation with you. Just one." He said, "Do you want to stay in this marriage or do you want out?" He said he would respect either answer, that what he could not continue to do was live inside a situation where he had no accurate information about his own life. He said, "This is where I am." He was not cold. He was not managed. He was very specifically present, more present than he had been in months, in a way that was harder to navigate than any version of the conversation I had prepared for, because presence cannot be argued with the way coldness can. I said, "There it is." I said he had always wanted to turn love into a reporting structure, to make her account for herself the way an employee accounts for her time. I named the job offer he accepted 14 months ago without consulting me. I named the way he showed love through logistics and provision while never once sitting down and asking what she actually felt inside all that correct, organized care. These were true things. His flaw was real. He did decide alone. He did withdraw into competence when things became uncertain. He did love through action in ways that sometimes felt, from the inside, indistinguishable from absence. I named all of it accurately. I named it in the service of a decision I had already made before I walked through the door, which is the specific act that transforms a true diagnosis into a weapon. He let me finish without interrupting. 5 seconds of silence. Then he said, still without heat, "I know the marriage wasn't perfect. I know I made you feel like decisions happened without you, and I know that was real and it cost you something." He said, "But I want you to hear this, because I think it's the only true thing left between us." He said, "You don't believe that steady love is real love. You've never believed it. I spent 6 years trying to be steady enough that you'd eventually trust it. And I understand now that wasn't something I could earn, because the problem was never steadiness." He said, "The problem is that you need the room to choose you every single night. And I was only ever one person." He said it without bitterness, without self-pity. The way you say something you have worked out very slowly, over a long time, and have made your peace with. And I stood in the living room of my own apartment with no response. Not because I was defeated, but because it was the most accurate sentence anyone had ever constructed about me, and you cannot argue with accuracy, only with things that are almost right. He finished the coffee. He walked to the kitchen. He rinsed the Lisbon mug under the tap. He turned it upside down on the drying rack. He had never done that. 6 years of mornings, the mug always right side up on the counter, ready for the next day. Upside down was how you put something away when you were finished. He went to the bedroom. He closed the door. I stood in the living room for a long time. The righteousness I had walked in with was still technically accessible. I could reach for it. But underneath it was something new, something with a different texture. The first edge of understanding that I had miscalculated the nature of what I was doing. Not guilt, not remorse. The specific cold sensation of a person who has played a hand they cannot retrieve and is beginning to understand it was the wrong hand. I went outside. Wren was parked on the street because I had texted her from the lobby. I got in the car and I told her everything in the version that kept me at the center of a clear moral position. She listened without confirming it, which was new. Then she said, "Sarah, he's going to do something real." I said he had been making sounds about doing something for weeks. She said, "No, I mean he already has." She said it with a tiredness that was not cruelty. Then she said she couldn't keep doing this, not angrily, just as something she had been holding for a long time and had decided to set down. I said, "After everything, you're choosing him." She said she wasn't choosing anyone. She said she was choosing herself. She said she was sorry and meant it. I got out of the car. I went upstairs. The mug was upside down on the rack. I stood in the kitchen and looked at it. I did not put it right side up. It was not mine to put right side up. And some part of me, the 9-year-old part, the one who had been running the auditions since the Thursday her mother packed 2 suitcases, already understood what the upside-down mug meant. She just wasn't allowed to say it yet. The process server was in the lobby at 7:09 a.m. on a Wednesday. I stepped off the elevator with my coffee still in my hand and my coat half buttoned and my brain in the specific fog of someone who has not been sleeping properly for 3 weeks. And I saw him before I understood what I was seeing. A man in a grey jacket near the mailboxes with a brown envelope and the practiced neutrality of someone who delivers bad mornings professionally. Callum was by the door. He was in his work coat, hands at his sides, standing near the door the way you stand near something you are about to leave. He looked at me when the elevator opened. That was all. He just looked. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. With the expression of someone who has finished a very long and difficult task and has nothing left to perform about it. He held the door open for himself, and he walked out. He did not look back. The door closed on its hydraulic hinge, slowly, the way doors close in buildings designed to prevent slamming. The process server said my name. He handed me the envelope. He said, "Have a good morning," with the same neutrality he brought to everything, and walked to the elevator and was gone. I stood in the lobby alone. I opened the envelope. Formal divorce petition. Temporary orders covering the joint accounts, the apartment, the shared car, the investment account. A first hearing date, specific, real, 3 weeks away. The apartment was his pending the hearing. I had 14 days for initial response. Everything was numbered. Everything was organized. The document was 72 pages, and every page was exactly what I would have expected if I had been paying any attention to what a man who engineers flood control systems does when he decides something needs to be contained. I called Rhea. 4 rings. Voicemail. I did not leave a message. I called Ren. She picked up on the second ring and said, "I know. Not as confirmation of my version, just as presence inside it, the last version of that presence she had left to give." I called my mother third. She answered on the first ring. She asked how I actually was. Not socially. Actually. I started the managed version, the framing, the narrative in which I was a person who had made brave choices and was now navigating consequences, and I got 3 sentences in and stopped. My mother waited. The silence was long. I said I'd call her back when I was ready. She said, "I'll be here." She said it like someone who knew about the cost of choosing wrong and had been waiting a long time for the conversation that would require that particular sentence. The furnished apartment was on the west side. 1 bedroom, cream walls, someone else's furniture, a window that looked directly into a parking structure's concrete face. I found it in 90 minutes from the lobby. The joint account was frozen within 48 hours. My personal account contained a number I had not looked directly at in 3 years, and the number was specific and sober and required me to sit with it for a long time before I could move. Rhea did not return my call, or the next one. 2 people from the rooftop went quiet in the group chat in the specific way that means a conversation happened without you in it and reached a conclusion. One person I barely knew sent me a long message about solidarity and strength, and reading it made me feel worse than all the silences combined. 8 days after the papers, Nico posted a new photo. A woman at an editorial event, dark dress, laughing at something off camera. The caption said that some people made every room they entered worth photographing. He had said something with that same architecture to me once. Not those words, but that structure, that particular vocabulary of being seen. I put the phone face down on the stranger's duvet and looked at the parking structure outside the window for a long time. I did not cry. What I felt was not grief exactly. It was the specific hollow of recognition. I had not been the exception. I had been the current instance of a thing Nico did on a regular basis with people who needed what I needed. And the next instance was already posted and tagged and accumulating likes at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night while I lay in a room where nothing belonged to me. The hearing came. My attorney was competent. The proceedings were orderly. The apartment transferred. The accounts closed. We signed things in rooms with other people present, and neither of us made it into anything other than what it was. The organized conclusion of something that had been disorganized for a long time. Callum did not look at me with anger. He did not look at me with satisfaction. He looked at me, once at the end, with something I can only describe as accurate. The expression of someone who sees a thing clearly and has finished deciding what to do about it. I went back to the apartment during the second week when he wasn't there. The Lisbon mug was on the shelf, exactly where it had always been. He had not taken it. He had not moved it. I stood in the kitchen for a long time and looked at the hairline crack along the base and the smudged white fish near the handle and the 6 years of mornings that object had been present for. I thought about taking it. I left it there. It was his. It had always been his. I had just been in the same room with it long enough to confuse proximity with ownership. What I believed, that needing more was its own form of courage, that a woman who admitted she wanted to feel chosen was more honest than one who pretended that quiet and steady were enough, that I was the one in the marriage willing to say the true thing, and the true thing was that I had outgrown it. What reality proved? I burned down a marriage to prove I couldn't be taken for granted, and by the time the ashes were organized into legal documents, there was no one left in the room to prove it to. What remains? A cream-walled apartment. A mug on a shelf that I keep not taking. A photographer who posts every week. Different light, different woman, same caption. And the specific knowledge that Callum is somewhere in a better apartment, with better light, and has probably already found a crossword partner who does it in pen and doesn't write words in the margin and cross them out before he can read them. I still don't know what the word was. I think about it sometimes. I think that's the truest thing I have left.